Okay, so we are starting at 5:57. Okay, let's see if we can make it for 15 minutes. Welcome everyone to this evening's session. We're going to talk about grievance management as a necessary skill that supervisors and managers must have to be able to resolve problems at the workplace objectively and fairly. Okay. So my name is Joyce Graham, as you already know, and I'm an HR manager. So our objectives for the evening, we are going to, at the end of the session, of course, we should be able to understand the importance of grievance management as a skill for supervisors and managers. Also gain practical examples that explain grievance and its management. Also understand the grievance procedure. So again, we'll also get some best practices in grievance management. So of course, our focus is going to be identifying the grievances, the practical steps in the grievance resolution process, and then some common mistakes to avoid in grievance management. So our short plan for the next, 15 minutes, which we have already taken some of it, will be to introduce us to the subject, go through the procedure of grievance resolution, get some practical examples and best practices, and then conclude and evaluate the course. So a few ground rules, of course, let's keep our phones or microphones muted. And when it's our turn to speak, then we unmute. We'll use the emoticons to engage. And then I encourage all of us to participate actively. Right. So, if you agree with me at this point, please drop a thumbs up to say that we are good to go. Yes, we're really good to go, right? Yes, I can see the reactions. Okay. And also, please confirm if you can still hear me and see me because of my internet trouble. Maybe with a thumbs up. Great. Okay, awesome. Right. So what is grievance management? It is a systematic process that sets out for all of us in the workplace how we are to approach and address workplace complaints and concerns. So it sets out a structure for us to follow to know, how to address any issue that comes to us through our subordinates, or our team members. It also gives us some framework, okay, into how to investigate a matter, how to document the matter and make sure that it is actually resolved within the given time frames. All right. So I'm going to ask you to look at these images and just, you raise your hand and share with me what any of these images tells you about the topic on grievance management. So anyone can go first. Just raise your hand and tell me, pick any of the images and tell me how you connect it with grievance management.
Okay, so Joyce, if I can go ahead, please.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So the picture that immediately got my attention okay, thank you. The picture that got my attention was the one with the scales, because as part of grievance management, I would expect that there's going to be fairness and equity, between the employer and the employee to
Right.
make sure that concerns are properly addressed.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Yes, very much aligned. Okay, who else wants to speak to an image?
I can go ahead. It's Vanessa.
Right.
I would look at the one with the checklist. I think from having experience in HR as well, it's about ensuring that everybody's following the rules of the law and the rules of the company.
Awesome. 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 Thank you so much, Vanessa. Following the rules and the laws. Victoria, do you want to pick the last image and share your thoughts? It could be the same image someone else has already mentioned or another one.
Sure. Knows that as an employee, you need to also have a patience. Maybe when it's not your turn for you to start something, you just have to know there's a rule. that guides everything. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. So this really connects us to the topic, and the discussion. That first of all, like Yusuf said, the scale over there symbolizes fairness and objectivity. As a supervisor, you should understand that people will come to you with their problems. And the last thing that you want to happen is for them to think that you're biased or you are taking sides, or you have a favorite. That way, from the get-go, you're already lost in being able to, or in them gaining trust in you to solve their problems. So fairness and objectivity is very important in the grievance management process. And that requires that as a manager, you don't just solve problems without gathering information, verifying information and getting evidence. And then Vanessa and I think Victoria spoke to the recording of events. First of all, the fact that there's a procedure in place that everybody has to follow. And that's why HR does briefings on policies and trainings on policies and procedures so that people are first aware, and then secondly, they are also following. And again, this symbol also talks to the documentation process, which is required in grievance management. And then our friend, the referee, also stands for the supervisor or manager who has to be attentive enough to identify when there's a problem in the team, whether people are not talking to each other, whether there's a communication breakdown, there is a tension among the team, and work is not moving as it has to move. As a supervisor or manager, you want to quickly identify this. And when you do so, you also want to verify it. That referees now do a second verification with technology and all that. You want to verify and establish what really is the problem and the facts of the case, and then proceed to solve it. And you also know that the referee is a timekeeper. So again, as a supervisor or a manager, you have to follow the time frame in resolving grievances, which we'll see in the grievance procedure steps. So thank you guys for sharing your thoughts on this. I think it's been awesome so far. Okay, so give yourselves a little, clap offering to say, yes, we've done a good job. All right. Is my screen frozen? Okay. So we're going to look at some levels of grievances, and then the affected groups, okay? So grievance can come in an informal way, and it can also come in a formal way. Again, grievance can come as an individual reporting a case or a group reporting a group problem. Sorry. So informal grievances, this can be, let's take a hotel setting, and we take a waiter who is always late for breakfast. I'm sure you all know how hotel breakfast is like. You have to come in very early as a waiter to serve people because the restaurant opens at, let's say, 6:30 in the morning. So there's one worker who is not coming early enough and is affecting, their performance at breakfast time. So the other can actually complain to the supervisor and say, this is the problem we have with Evelyn. This is the problem we are having with Kofi, and it's affecting our performance at breakfast time. We want you to address the matter for us. So the supervisor can just, mediate this conversation, talk to Evelyn. This is what the group is saying, this is what is happening at breakfast. Try to resolve it as soon as possible and with very little, formality, and then close the issue. So that would be an informal, resolution step, which does not include any recording or writing of notes. Or it can become a formal incident where the group decides to escalate something formally, either because it was not properly addressed at the informal stage, or it's probably somebody wanting to let management hear about their issue. So in that case, it becomes a formal grievance case, which will be lodged, first of all, to the supervisor, unless the supervisor is the subject of the complaints, then it will go to the head of department. The head of department will try to resolve it in that order. And then it can also be an individual or group level. So someone who feels like I'm being discriminated against, by the team. Every time I come in, they look at me in a certain way, maybe because of something about me. And this person decides that this is something that has to be addressed because it's either affecting them personally, they are probably getting depressed, they are getting worried, and they are not having any connection to the workplace. Or it can be at a group level where a group of workers feel there's a problem in the work area, either on a work conditions basis or a new policy that's not favorable. They can raise their concerns as a group, or if it's a unionized environment, then they would raise the concern through the union representation. All right. So we're going to look at the nature of grievances that are usually reported. And I think we'll run through this because we shared it in the pre-course document. So unfair treatment, workplace policy related, performance related. So grievance can also be because someone feels that, okay, I'm always being rated low by my supervisor, but I know I get my work done. I try my best to meet my targets and my objectives, but I always get a low rating from my supervisor. This is one place that, a grievance can start from. Unfavorable working conditions. There are minimum standards that labor requires organizations to have, in terms of safety, in terms of workers' conditions, the kind of environment they work in and all that. So if at any point in time there are issues around this, the workers can raise concerns or grievances that needs to be addressed. Abuse of authority. Again, some supervisors or managers can overextend their authority in how they address their workers and treat them, And then personality clashes. Two people just don't get on. Harassment, sexual harassment, making funny comments about the opposite sex and thinking that they like it and sending them messages continuously is not acceptable. Then there's bullying and intimidation. Some of these things can even get physical, and we have to nip it in the bud before they get to that point. So the steps in the formal grievance process as well, I think we captured that. So for the sake of time, we'll run through it. What is important for us to note here is that each step has a certain number of days within which you have to resolve the problem. And again, if it's not solved at the informal stage, then it's escalates to the formal stage. So whoever is the first point of call, that's the supervisor, should attempt to resolve the matter within a certain number of days, usually between 3 to 5 days. If you're unable to succeed, it goes to the head of department, who also has to do so within 3 to 5 days. And then when you receive the complaint, you have to take time to actually do some investigation and digging to gather all necessary information before you make a decision. Finally, whatever decision is made also has to be recorded and communicated back to the worker in writing. In the event where the investigation, maybe the complexity of the case requires a hearing, to find out the truth of the matter, the worker has the right to be accompanied to that hearing. And finally, when the hearing is done and the recommended solution, to the problem has been identified, if the worker is still unhappy with the final resolution, they have the right to appeal to a higher body, whether it's HR or the general manager, to say that this issue has not been resolved satisfactorily for me. So thank you for your inputs on the case study. I think we all get it, that this is a pure, workplace related scenario. It's a work, right? But I've still just got one vote so far. Or you're still on it? Yes, I want to see the hearts, the thumbs up that you have really got something from this session. Okay, I couldn't see it, but I hope it came through.